He said that, no? That was him. I thought that, sorry.
And my granddaughter just threw my credit card right out of this.
Yeah. Can I have your credit card next so I can,
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
It wasn't wrong.
I know.
Come on, have fun, Stuart.
No, good afternoon. Today is Monday, May 12th. This is a combination, first part work session, second part special meeting. We have only one item on the agenda for the work session, discussion of proposed river access ordinance. Who is going to present for the city?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I believe you all have been provided with the updated
Yes.
river ordinance. If you've had a chance to review, you will notice that we took some of the feedback that we received from the previous work sessions and incorporated in the language of the updated ordinance. Made a better separation of what was construction work and what was outfitting in the description. Provided a better description of what the actual river channel is in that description, so a better understanding of what the area is we're defining as the river corridor. You will notice we removed the language regarding the water containers, so that is no longer in there. We also let's see what we have here. We removed some additional language. We made it so that the fisher guide, fly fishing guides, no longer had to provide a life jacket. That language was removed, and I think overall it just made it a more concise, better ordinance. Pretty much turn it over to you as council if you have any questions on the revised or the updated ordinance, and go from there.
Okay, start.
Can you start over there, because I have some detailed stuff that I'd rather hear what you have to say.
I certainly appreciate the effort that was taken to make changes. I would say, in the course of the day, I received one call from the Department of Wildlife, and they still have concerns with this that I think are important. I'd say this is still problematic in a lot of ways. Well, it's something we need to do, and what I find interesting, every single entity that has been involved in this, or that is going to be governed by this even, in some fashion controlled by this, every single entity has expressed publicly that they would support this being done, the river ordinance. But I think it's important that it's done collectively with adequate preparation and consideration for all involved, and that every stakeholder is properly represented, and then it's rolled out in a cohesive manner. I don't think we've done that. I mean, we still haven't received or heard from the Department of Wildlife today, the Army Corps of Engineers, unless you have other, unless you can say otherwise, and that's not a challenge, it's a question. My preference would be that we just table this and that it goes to some sort of, I don't think committee is the right word, but committee that implements it with these groups involved and brings back two cohesive ordinances, one for recreation and one for development. That would be my recommendation. I think anything else is going to be a patch, and to my knowledge, it doesn't need to be done quickly or in a hurry. So a patch isn't something we should do. We should you can still take this and split it. The basis is here, but let's just split it. Include the Army, the Department of Wildlife, and go forth. I think if we act on it now, it's a patch, and I don't think would be putting the city's best foot forward or the best interest of the city. I'd like to see it developed and then brought to us in two. That's my input.
Can you expand on what the Parks and Wildlife individual told? What is their concern?
Well, just that they are the agency of record that would govern fishing through the corridor. They have the biologists that would, I would say, be more readily available, trained, and the right organization determine ecologic health of the river. I think, to put us in that position is, I think that we should leave to professionals
Would you explain?
their profession. So that's my
Okay.
belief.
I just thought there was something specific that you had that was mentioned to you.
That's in a nutshell. I mean, it encompasses the content of it, how we believe.
Okay. All right. Mr. Thurman?
He took everything I had said and shot it out of the water. I was going to talk about safety rules for us fly fishing, but he took that and took it to another direction. I appreciate you doing all the hard work personally. And you shouldn't have to carry this whole load by yourself. Army Corps of Engineers, wildlife, and other people who have invested stake in this should also be putting in on this. I don't think you should be trying to corral this by yourself without having someone else look at it and maybe improve language and improve whatever they need to do to have the water rights seamless across the board. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? All right.
Appreciate it.
So I'm in agreement with Councilman Williamson and Councilman Thurman. I believe it still feels a little bit rushed. It's almost there. And I did say this on the last time when we went through that it just needs some more fine tuning. Going through and giving the stakeholders opinions, I think, would do wonders. So this way that they're contributing, they've looked it over. I'm not sure if they're allowed to look at it before to have their input, but I think that would be a great thing to see if there's anything that we're missing to move forward, because there could be a few things that we could be missing in there, or that we could refine just with a little bit. And I think a conversation could be warranted with those stakeholders. Also, I kind of feel like this is Ms. Marshall's second meeting, and I don't think she's had a chance, I'm just assuming, to sit down and go through this line by line. So I think we should give her a chance to go through it, make sure, possibly maybe reach out and see if anybody has any input they want to add. This way that there may be a final draft finally coming, so we can kind of look through, and then possibly so we don't have to go through so many edits. I do appreciate the work that's gone into it. The refinement is a lot better. And I still feel the two ordinance separated would be good, or classifying them one way or another would be something for refinement. But I think we're almost there, and I'm just ready to move forward with it. But thank you.
Mr. Schuler?
At the last time we had a work session, Bob Holder was here, and so was the Army Corps engineer. So did they put any input to this? Or if they didn't, why didn't they? I mean, they were going to do it.
I think most of the updates and the revisions that we have done have been from the feedback that came from those individuals at those work sessions. I'm not aware of any other information they've provided. Their feedback was specifically what put in item number 8, where federal, state, and so that's section C, item 8, the city of Trinidad shall exclude federal, state, and other government agencies in the performance of their prescribed duties in relationship to wildlife, natural resource management, and maintenance from conservation and work permit requirements. So pretty much that we are not trying to supersede or get into their responsibilities, and this ordinance exempts them from any sort of oversight from the city on them doing their necessary.
Right.
So we're not trying to encroach on that in any way. So if they need to be in the river doing what Natural Resources does, or Game and Fish does, or Army Corps of Engineer does, that is their right to do so.
Because we weren't trying to do anything to, how should I put it, to govern them because they do their own thing.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, they've already put their, you could say their 2 cents in.
I would feel so.
And then I agree we should have 2 different deals. And I think I don't know why we would even think about doing permits or anything for people that want to do work for the river. I mean, that's something that, other than having a permit to see what they're going to do, there shouldn't be, and I don't know, discuss that. Someone had an idea, I think we were going to charge people to do stuff in the river, but I don't think that's the point. I
No,
think
absolutely
the point
not.
was just to find out what they're going to do, so we know that it's going by what everybody that has a share in it would understand to do. So that's my opinion. Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Hi, Jared.
Hey.
First and foremost, I believe that the most important aspect is that the benefactors have to be the stakeholders. They need not to be excluded in this, and I believe I concur with the other councilmen in that regard, in that capacity, and the 2 ordinances need to be initiated and implemented as well, recreation as opposed to development. So, I mean, I can't elaborate any more than what the other council members have already stated, but that's what I ascertain.
I hear a lot, excuse me, a throat issue. I agree with a lot of what has been stated. I'm curious why you chose not to split the ordinance into 2 parts. A.
I don't have an answer to that. I did not draft the ordinance.
Okay, but you're the one who's presenting it to us, and you're the one who's saying this is good, and this is what we want to do as a city staff person, correct?
Correct, and in my opinion, as it reads, we've separated out that I don't think 2 separate ordinances is necessary. I think with this one ordinance with 2 subsections, it's pretty clear that it provides the kind of guidance that a city would need in order to manage its resource.
So what you're saying is you disagree with the approach that council is saying we want 2 different ordinances.
By no means, if council wants 2 different ordinances, we will provide council with 2 different ordinances.
I don't know if we are trying to give you a consensus, but I think that's what we're saying. And I think it would help a great deal to clarify what the permittee, whether they're a commercial outfitter or a government agency doing work, what their job is to do to comply with what the city wants. I think it's very confusing to add recreational use to this because recreational users are not making changes, as far as I understand, to the riverbanks. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to say because you're stepping in the water and fishing, or because you're stepping in the water and floating down the river, that we need all this information from you. I agree with the insurance. We need to know when and if they're going to be out there during a season. But other than that, I don't understand why we would make this any kind of burdensome process for them. By the same token, I don't think we should make this a burdensome process for the other governmental agencies that work in the river. We want them to do that work. So, but we want them to coordinate with us and our plans as a city. And I think this has just gotten all gummed up by adding the recreational part to it, and I think we should definitely separate them. On some technical aspects of this, I spent a lot of time. I tend to try not to lose the forest for the trees, but I also look at every ordinance that we put out as something that a constituent is going to try to read and understand and So I want it to be as clear as possible and the terminology as consistent as possible. So if we are not going to split them, then I would want you to work on making it a consistent terminology for outfitter, commercial outfitter, and, hold on just a second. There's several different ways we use the terminology. Each outfitter / commercial user, it should just always be one thing. Outfitter, commercial / commercial user. You don't need apostrophe S's or S apostrophe. It just makes it messy. So that's one general thing. I sent you an email about we have invasive species, and I'm sure that you meant that to be invasive species.
Yes, ma'am, I appreciate you catching that.
There are things like the city's consistency in the use of Oxford comma, because you need that. And if we always use the Oxford comma or we don't use the Oxford comma, that should be consistent, and I don't know that it is in here. I see in A3 at the bottom, defining outfit, we have in the line that starts activities including but not limited to a semicolon, which we don't need a semicolon there. Then we have the temporary use of recreational tubes, comma, rafts, comma, human-powered crafts, comma, flotation devices. That would be a good place for a comma, and or guided fishing experiences with the Purgatory River corridor. So that's one thing. On paragraph 9, A9, about defining recreational tube, the last sentence, I want you to explain to us, why do we need that last sentence, which says recreational tube does not mean foam, pool toys, etc. Are we saying there, does this mean that these kinds of flotation devices are prohibited? Or are we saying that if you are using these kinds of flotation devices, this permit doesn't apply to you?
I can appreciate the need for clarification there.
Okay, so I think if you've already defined what recreational tube is. I don't know that you need to keep talking about it.
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
that's what I would say with that. And C2, A, B, and C, I think you change that based on some prior input, or maybe it's a different part, but you're saying prior to any construction work permit application being submitted to the city, the applicant shall meet with the city manager for a concept review to A, B, C, but it doesn't say A, B, and C. Those are all three things that they have to, not just one of those things. Coming down to paragraph 3, we have about halfway through that paragraph under C, a sentence that starts, additionally, if necessary, water control plan shall be submitted to the appropriate state and or federal agency and copied to the city of Trinidad. First of all, when is it necessary? There's no explanation of when that's necessary. Is that defined by the city manager or the designee? And then we have a new term, water control plan, that we've thrown in there. If that's something that's significant to this ordinance, perhaps that should be in the definitions. And there's another water supply plan that's referenced in C9 where we talk about no activity shall cause depletion of water quantity. And then any activity causing depletion will require a division of natural resources substitute water supply plan. What is that? We're throwing that in here now. Is it something that we could say as defined by some statute or whatever it is? But I think it would be helpful to have that explained. Jumping back up to paragraph 7. In that same section, the city of Trinidad shall include water rights, conveyance, infrastructure for the purposes of access, maintenance, operation, construction, etc. What does that mean? What does it mean when we're saying we are excluding water rights, conveyance, infrastructure? I don't even know what that means.
So that is any sort of improvement or structure work that's done by the water, by the irrigators for them to have access and to obtain their water. So we're excluding anything that they need to do in order to have access to their water rights. Nor do we want to have any control over that.
Okay, maybe that's another defined term then, that
Sure.
somebody needs to understand what we're talking about. A lot of the next section has to do with just what I said before about making a consistent term of outfitter/commercial user. Let's see. Paragraph E3, that's the one where somebody before had pointed out that we're saying based on any or all of the following criteria. And then we have an A, B, and C, and perhaps that should be and/or. Predatory river water flow, dissolved oxygen levels, and/or water temperatures. The next paragraph down, the last sentence, we're talking about in consultation with Army Corps and/or state engineer. Are you talking about the Army Corps of Engineers there? And if so, I think it should state that. And who's the state engineer? Who is that you're talking about?
That, I think the engineer is in reference to our engineering department as the floodplain coordinator.
Okay, so maybe it should be Army Corps of Engineer and the floodplain coordinator?
That could be better clarified then.
Okay, and then that's the same thing, the next paragraph down has that. Let's see, okay. In paragraph 8, you got rid of the need for a life jacket for fishing customers, but then the first part of that paragraph, I just want to make sure I'm understanding, are you requiring that recreational tubes renters provide life jackets? Are you requiring that they make the participants wear a life jacket? Or are you just saying make them available and leave it to their choice?
Yes, that's it. They have to have them to make them available, whether the participant tuber wears them or not. That is left on the outfitter to decide whether that is. But as a city, we're requiring them to have them and make them available.
Okay. Paragraph 7 above that, we're talking about, we changed the date by which a fee is going to be charged to a outfitter or a commercial user from the 20th of September to the first day of February, annually to the city. Why have we not set it up in a way that makes more sense, which is that when they apply, if they're approved, that's when they pay, and it's good for a year? Why is it any kind of a date?
That's very well could be. We just set a date so that there's a certain date. It makes it easier administratively, because then we aren't keeping
Right.
an annual, this person expires on this day, kind of like business licenses are due at a certain time, and we renew the business license, and it's good for the duration of that time.
I
So
can
initially, it
understand that.
might be a little bit
Yeah.
crazy, but once that individual or that outfitter, they would have that renewal date of February 1st, just to keep things. And then as a city, we can track them. It was like, well, they haven't renewed by February 1st, and we can go and, seek their outfitting and then follow up on that.
Okay, so I think that could be clarified to say, regardless of the date that they originally are approved, if they intend to keep that permit in place, that they're
That's the
charged
date.
on the date, that
Right.
date. Okay, I think that's pretty much. Okay, and then with the permit itself, I think the permit itself is really, when you look at that, you really understand why this should be two separate ordinances. Because there's a lot in here that a commercial outfitter's going, what?
Sure.
Are you even talking about? So, right, in that first paragraph, after, excuse me, after the line, we talk about describing where you giving a permit for the use of, access over and across that certain real property known as a purgatory river, corridor, channel, the property, and we have defined both of those terms in this ordinance. But then we talk about later, okay, oh, I know what it is. Exhibit A references floodplain map as Exhibit A, and Exhibit B being the depiction of the permit area and the access route. So is the floodplain the property over which they are getting the permit, or is it the Purgatoire River Corridor channel? Which one is it?
They're one and the same. The corridor and the channel, that could be clarified better, but in essence, they're interchangeable.
Okay, maybe you could say the Purgatoire River channel corridor within the floodplain as
Right.
Exhibit A. Okay. Okay. And we already talked about annual fee in there. And a lot of times in here, we're talking about temporarily access the permit area. If we're giving an outfitter a year permit, why are we calling that temporary access? It seems like that's another reason why these should be two separate things. If there's a body of work, construction work, that an agency needs to do, I can understand it's temporary access. But an annual permit is all year long.
I think that was clarification that the permit is annual, that once you have a permit, it's not good in perpetuity, but that is only temporary, but it has to be renewed every year.
Okay, I think if you're just saying, for the period of time that the permit is issued, makes more sense than calling it temporary. Okay. All right. Then you have 2 days business notice of the work. So these are, again, similar things that really just apply to
Sure.
construction or work being done. And then paragraph 5, requiring the grantee to repair all damage to structures, utilities, landscaping, improvements resulting from grantee's activities under the permit, and return the landscape, blah, 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 all other physical site conditions to a condition as close as original to the original state. What if the project is to change it? So you don't want it back to the original state, they don't want it back to the original state. So why aren't we just saying in accordance with the approved plans?
Great language should definitely be incorporated.
Okay. And then Karen, our mayor, I'm looking to you to look at paragraph 8 there of the permit about how the requirements for liability insurance are laid out, but there are a couple perhaps typos in there, including death, the line that starts including death to persons, personal injury, that probably could be death or injury to persons. Okay, and then in paragraph 9, starts the city represent, there's a typo there, it should be the city represents. Paragraph 10, permits issued in accordance with section 13.6 of the code. Is this not going to be 13.4?
I believe that is 13.4.
Okay, so it should be 13.4 rather than 13.6 there. All right, and then the last line is, this permit shall be revocable at the pleasure of the city manager. And I noticed that's in there. Do we have any limitations that we want to put in on that, or just, it sounds a little,
Well, authoritative.
yeah, and it sounds like, if I'm an agency and I'm saying, okay, we're going through all this trouble to get this work approved, it's strange to me to say that the city would be saying, well, we might change our mind.
And it's kind of mentioned in the ordinance, the specific reasons it talks about water temperature and stuff like that. I think I could see how it could appear that way, but I definitely don't think the intent would be just at the whim too. But perhaps what would you suggest verbiage-wise that would make it not feel that
That I don't know, and that obviously I think is going to be up to our city attorney to how to word that. And it may be that we just want to say it that way, but it just strikes me as a little bit off-putting.
And
after all this.
maybe it doesn't need to be in there because it is mentioned in the ordinance about occasions where the city manager, for various justifiable reasons, can limit or revoke the permit, so maybe we just strike that.
Okay. All right, well, that is the sum of all my tree commentary, but I mean, just generally, I think that if this is an ordinance that we're putting out there that state and federal agencies are going to be working with, it damn well needs to be well done. It needs to be no typos, no misstated words. We need it as clear as possible, and that's why I've gone through all this effort to put this out there.
Can we have your notes, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Liz?
I said, can we have your notes, please? Or a copy of your
Yeah,
notes? Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin.
You're welcome.
Appreciated it. So I don't have an attorney's mind. I'm a very simple woman, and simply, I just want to protect the land adjacent to the river for the full pleasure of the citizens and visitors of Trinidad. And I think that's what our intent is. I called somebody with CPW because we were talking about what the state requires. So if you go up to Trinidad Lake, if you have a fishing permit, you still need a permit to get on to the property. And I think basically that's all we're saying as well. Okay, there's a lot of detail in there, but I think our main purpose of this ordinance, and it should be done properly, and we will get it done properly, to make sure that the property that belongs to the city of Trinidad will not be damaged by any person, whether it's construction or recreation. That being said, I asked the ranger up at the lake, I said, well, okay, give me an example of why you needed this. He said, well, we had an individual that had a fishing license, and this individual got on shore and started a fire. That is my concern. That's my concern, because there is a lot of valuable assets down there, and a lot of work the city already has done to remove like the Russian olive trees and things like that don't do well for the flow of the river. That being said, I think we're not trying to take over the parks and wildlife. We're not trying to take over for the state of Colorado. Basically, we're saying we want to protect the city of Trinidad property, period, for misuse. And so if we can, I never wanted it to be this complicated, but it seems like in trying to adjust it, we're making it more complicated. I don't see why we need to have to. I mean, this is our property to either play or work or do your livelihood on our property. We need to know what you're doing, period. I mean, I think it's simple. So that being said, that's all I have to say.
Thank you very
Mayor,
much.
may I say a couple of things, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I will apologize for all the, I guess, misperceptions, all the corrections, and for my colleague and friend Jared Chatterley being put through the grist mill. I didn't intend for that to happen, and I'm sorry. A lot of this is an amalgamation of thoughts and policies in our attempt to regulate this, and I feel like I kind of just had you served up as, and so anyway, I apologize for all that. We have heard your direction, we understand that, we will do 2 ordinances. I just want to say we're not stepping on any toes, I promise you. What we're trying to do is regulate a matter of local concern. And that's what we're doing, and we're trying to accomplish kind of just what the mayor said. Also, I want to say that I do think that Mr. Holder and someone from the Army Corps of Engineers was here before,
Yes,
but I
they
think
were.
that was the session that I missed. I'm sure it was. I
Yes.
would remember that. So they were involved. We're trying to involve everybody, and if memory serves, and it may not, I think that we called for this work session after a lot of people like Mr. Lopez and Ms. Knutson and Mr. Kirby were saying they wanted a work session because they wanted to weigh in on the ordinance when we had petitions and communications, and that was one of the main things. Not saying these comments weren't timely and appropriate and all that, I get that, but I think that was one of the reasons for this. So we have heard everything, we have Councilman Ogletree's notes. I just want to say that was a lot of corrections and kind of remedial steps, and again, we hear it, we'll do it, we'll bring it back, and we're trying to accommodate everything, and I promise you, we're not trying to step on the toes of folks like the Army Corps of Engineers or the Division of Wildlife. One other point, and that is, the Division of Water Resources is also referred to as the state engineer, so that was why we refer to the state engineer. There were a lot of things that you were asked. Anyway, that's all I have. I'm sorry, I'm not getting defensive.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Mr. Downs,
Sir.
just to clarify, when staff does that whole rework process and makes the two ordinances, at that point, I guess you guys internally would contact the stakeholders that we've all mentioned at various points and have, I don't know if buy off or sign off would be the right word, but at least some sort of record of input to the process?
Happy to, although please understand, I mean, and the answer is just yes. But I just want to say a lot of times we do things that people may not
No,
love.
I get that, but I
Right.
mean, at least the steps we're taking where the people were reached out to and like, this is what we have, we can tweak it as far as this is our final recommendation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, absolutely. But yes,
Okay, Mr. Downs, I have a procedural question for
yes,
you.
ma'am.
So I guess is it the consensus of council you want two separate?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Frank?
Yeah, I think it would probably be better for everybody.
Yeah, because it does involve two different departments.
Okay. So I'm wondering if we can continue with the ordinance for recreational use only, and then at a separate time, get an ordinance for construction. And wouldn't that be handled with the building permits and,
I think so.
yeah,
I think so, yes. So we can try to do them in close proximity to each other.
Okay.
But we'll do two, obviously, and then maybe focus on one and then the other.
right.
You know, we do kind of want to regulate river activities for the summer season. right?
Yes.
I mean, like, even though, you know, we haven't done that before, really, which is one of the reasons why we want this. But sure, we can do it, but we'll try to have them in close proximity to each other.
And it's worth repeating too, that this is prompted by the Army, the contract we have with the Army Corps of Engineers. Granted, that's 60 years ago, but we're addressing it now. And, you know, we are in contract where we made an agreement with the Corps that this is what we're gonna do, and we have no vehicle to do that until we get an ordinance. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you. All righty, Mr. Chatterley.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterley.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Okay.
Mayor, prior to closing the work session, I'd like to bring up our new HR manager, Cassie Coleman, to introduce herself to you. Thanks, Cassie.
Sure. Hello, my name is Cassie Coleman. Brief background. I've been here in Trinidad for a year and a half. Recent transplant. I did come from Texas.
Come from where?
Austin, Texas.
A lot of good things come out of Texas.
And I truly love the city. I have been working at the Trinidad High School for the last year and a half. as an admin assistant there in the main office. I've gotten to know a lot of the students, a lot of the parents, and have volunteered my time with like NHS, basketball gates, various things here and there, and recently had a bittersweet goodbye, or see you later actually. I assured them, it's a small town, we're gonna run into each other. Prior to that, I was in HR in Austin. I have a background as an HR generalist at a retirement community, and this is a pretty swanky one on Lake Travis. So they had senior living as well as a skilled nursing section, multiple restaurants, and we were hiring everything from like security, maintenance, to nurses, physical therapists, that kind of thing. And then I got my start in HR as a staff development coordinator at Taurus Academy. This is a organization in Austin with about 100 employees. They have 6 locations where they do dog boarding, training, and grooming. So that was super fun. I fell in love with developing staff and kind of being there through the employee life cycle. So I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate all of you allowing me to do that.
Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Cassie.
I might add, the dogs are probably going to be better trained than the humans.
The humans are the tricky part of that dynamic for sure.
No, we're happy to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to get used to my humor. Okay, that concludes the work session. The next